Montana Talks here. Live and local. This is Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
Talking about the issues that matter to Montana statewide. This is Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
Hey, we're going to jump right into it this morning. You know, normally we have open phone lines where anybody across the state of Montana, well, heck, even across the country can call into this show. But today, hold your phone calls, message us on the Montana Talks app if you want to jump in on the conversation that way. Today, we are broadcasting live from the Hilton Garden Inn in Bozeman. And big thanks to the staff here. I got coffee right in front of us. And we got some donuts here that the Gallatin County Republican women dropped by too. So come down and see us. Step up to the microphone if you got something you want to talk about. We got our good friend Tom here in Bozeman first up this morning. Tom, great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Aaron. We talked about John Tester's insipid campaign ads. He ran the same campaign 6 years ago against Rosendahl. He says, these are out-of-staters. They don't share our values. Who of us shares John Tester's values? I mean, I'm not from New York or California. Everyone in this, we've got a majority in the legislature. Every elected office in the state is Republican except Tester. And then he is, just the fact that he's assuming where he doesn't share our values, and he drags up an 80-year-old, fossil, farmer to comment. So tiresome, these ads. Our values are conservative. Our values are family-oriented. Our values are God-oriented. And Tester's values are more akin to Washington, Oregon.
He is so
York.
desperate now is what it seems like. It seems like he is getting very desperate. And first off, it's one thing if you want to say this about some other politician or whatever. Maybe you could get away with that in the past. But John Tester is apparently now in his campaign commercials saying that this man doesn't share our values. Right. This man served our country in uniform as a United States Navy SEAL. This man fought and bled for this country. He's a Purple Heart Bronze Star with valor. Is that not our values, John Tester?
Exactly.
It makes you question his values even more so. Just to make the point of how desperate Democrat Senator John Tester is, what did he do just, 3 weeks ago? He voted against the Laken-Riley Act. But the guy is so desperate to get elected again that he just now flip-flopped and says that he'll support the Laken-Riley Act. You were supposed to vote in support of that about 3 weeks ago, buddy.
Yeah. He always votes in support of our values when his vote is inconsequential. When his vote means nothing, Schumer comes up to him and says, John, we don't care how you vote because it's of no consequence, so you could vote like a Montanan, Montana values.
Pretend to share the values of Montanans. He gets to do that every 6 years. Yeah. And then, what a phony. The old flip-flop, flat-top, fake moderate, back at it once again. Well, Tom, if you can, stick around. We'll come back to you after the break here. But I understand you may have to run. We got other folks that want to step up to the microphone as well. So stand by, live from the Hilton Garden Inn, Bozeman.
Securing America.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke to part of the military's future Thursday, meeting with members of the ROTC program at South Carolina State University, as well as troops from nearby Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina.
Let me begin by thanking you for raising your right hand and volunteering to join the greatest team on the planet.
Austin telling those on hand there are no shortcuts in the service they have chosen.
You get to be successful by putting in the work.
And Austin said in exchange for that hard work,
we ensure that we're going to have a great military by investing in you.
The secretary told the young soldiers that their challenges will only grow over time. But if they demonstrate that they care about the people serving underneath them,
they will refuse to let you fail. They will propel you to success.
Kevin Uretsky, Fox News.
So was Donald Trump mocking John Tester for looking like a pregnant woman, or was he mocking Democrats for thinking men can get pregnant? Either way, the story, MontanaTalks.com.
This is where Montana talks. Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
All right, Tom and Bozeman able to stick around with us for a couple more minutes before he's got to hit the road and get to work here this morning. By the way, Tom, we caught up. It was so fun seeing you in Roberts at the Roberts Cafe a few weeks ago. We did one of our Americans for Prosperity Montana Bidenomics events there, and you introduced us to a legendary, Kevin Red Star, an incredible Montana artist. I got that poster that he gave me, that he signed for me. It's framed. I'm going to get it up in our studios now. But and when I brought it into the lady at Hobby Lobby, she was like, "Oh, Kevin, he is the nicest man ever. He's one of the best artists, but the most humble guy." And so she almost had like tears in her eyes when she saw that I had a Kevin Red Star painting, just poster even, just because he's that remarkable of an artist.
Kevin is great, and he's going to be honored in November. I mean, the Cowboy Artists of America is a very elite Western Art Association in Fort Worth, and you usually have to submit pieces and be curated, and they will then judge you and decide whether you are worthy of becoming a member. They invited Kevin, to participate. We're headed down there to Fort Worth in November, but Kevin, I'll see him today. I'll tell him you said hello. He's a great guy. Yeah. But I'm going to leave everyone with just about the scariest thought I can present to you. That's all of you people out there that are thinking about voting for Joe Biden. There's no way he's going to survive, or there's no way he's going to make it through a second term. In fact, the whole plan is he'll serve a few months, then he'll resign, and you will have President Kamala Harris, an absolute airhead, absolute tackling for days. Get on. I mean, will be the laughing stock of the world. So people need to.
Some people might say, "Well, Tom, could it get any worse?" But then again, look at Chicago had Lori Lightfoot, and it could get even worse than Lori Lightfoot, as the current guy is showing you.
Yes, it did even get worse. So,
did you see? I don't know if you saw this. The DailyCaller.com has this headline here: comedian roasts Biden administration staffer sitting in the audience. The comedian, apparently his name is Josh Ocean Thomas. He was at the Laugh Factory, and he starts talking with the audience. He says, "Hey, tell me, what do you do for work? What do you do for?" He's like, "I work for the Biden administration." And the guy's like, "Oh," he's like, well, "Is your job to wake him up? Hey, there's a war." And then he just lays into this guy. It was hysterical.
Then, in that case, Maxine Waters, the 85-year-old lady who wears the wig, of like a 25-year-old, she's saying, "Well, they're training in the hills now, the right wing is a revolution." Yeah. And she's the one that said, if you see any Trump people, get in their faces and get very aggressive with them. And these people condone violence on the one hand. Remember when the governor of Arkansas's daughter was harassed down in Lexington, Virginia?
Currently just going out for lunch.
Yeah. So that's the way they act, yet they want to be treated in an extremely civil fashion.
Oh, exactly.
Be nice to us.
Yeah.
Hypocrites.
So this comedian, it was pretty funny too. As he starts going back and forth with this guy who admitted that he worked for the Biden administration. He says, you have the freedom to lie. Because the guy says, "Well, I work for the Biden administration." And the comedian said, "You could have admitted you were a hooker, and I would have been prouder of you than saying that you work for the Biden administration."
I've got a good in that regard, I've got a great joke for you. I'll tell you tonight in Big Timber.
Oh, okay. It's probably
sure. It'll take a few minutes.
Probably a little too unwoke for the live radio airwaves right now.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
All right.
It's a good one.
Well, yeah, he mentioned Big Timber. So, yeah, you're driving down to Red Lodge to do some business down there. I'm going to be at the Fort in Big Timber from 5 to 7 tonight.
Restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gun Shop, too. And
Right.
so we'll be doing one of these events that are paid for by Americans for Prosperity, Montana. We're going to have some gift cards. Yeah, we'll be at the Fort in Big Timber 5 to 7 tonight. Now, my friend Dan in Big Timber is not going to be able to make it, but he's very elderly and feeble, so somebody needs to pick up a blanket for him that we'll be handing out. I'm just joking. I got to give my friend Dan a hard time whenever I'm in Big Timber. So, not your son, Dan.
No.
Dan
Okay.
Rosted, he's a great guy, but I always got to joke around with him. And, I have to add about 20 or 30 years to his age whenever I joke about him, so it's a...
Well, I'm... The years fly by fast. Make good use of them. I'm 73.
What? Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So,
and there's some 23-year-olds sitting on mom and dad's couch, not even working, and you're still working.
That's right. I tell my kids, make good use of your time because you've only got so much.
That's right. Well, I know one of your kids. He's making good use of his time. So,
yes, thank you.
Tom, great to see you as always. Thanks for dropping in. Safe travels. Yeah, we'll see you hopefully at the Fort in Big Timber from 5 to 7 tonight. Next up on the phone lines, it's great to see Suzanne Nordwick. I tell you what, she's been such a great conservative champion for over the years. Suzanne Nordwick is running for the Public Service Commission, basically the Southwest Montana seat. There's been redistricting, so it's kind of crazy. But Suzanne, great to see you.
Hi, thanks, Aaron. The Public Service Commission seat, District 3, actually goes from Ravalli County all the way up to Petroleum County. So I kind of call it the Nike swoosh through Montana. So it's been a lot of traveling for me back and forth. I'm based out of, north of Butte in Walkerville, and getting to Lewistown is a 4-hour drive, and going over to Hamilton's a 3-hour drive. But
lots of mountain passes to cross, too. Yeah.
I've been getting around the state, and I sure appreciate all those candidates that run for the statewide offices.
Yeah. Well, I know you got a great message on why you're running for the PSC, and there is a competitive Republican primary in that Public Service Commission district. So, Suzanne, stand by. Open microphones. Come back right after this. Talk more with Suzanne Nordwick for the PSC.
The Brett Bear Minute.
The president was pretty unequivocal. He was pretty clear that he blamed Hamas for October 7th, said anti-Semitism is unacceptable and on the rise, and didn't couch it. It seemed like that may have been a speech many days in the making. Fox News White House correspondent Peter Ducey.
The White House is in a real pickle because they want to let the protesters know, we hear you. We see you stopping traffic and burning American flags outside the Met Gala, but they also need to signal to Jewish Americans that they generally support Israel, even if sometimes that is hard to see with the criticism of the military. And I don't know how much success they've had so far.
I'm Brett Bear. We'll see you next time.
Serving the great state of Montana. From the peaks of the Beartooths to the banks of the Clark Fork River. Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
Let's see. Let's check our messages here on the Montana Talks app. Dennis in Bozeman sent us a message earlier. Did you hear about the New York Post article about Biden's 15 lies in 17 minutes on the CNN interview? I know I saw something about that, but I didn't get a chance to read that full story yet. Dennis, if you can, send us a link to that story on our Montana Talks app as well. I'd love to check it out during our next break. Let's see. Another one from, it looks like he just sent the link in. There we go. All right. He beat me to the punch on that one. Let's see, but he says a caller to the Dan Bongino show opined that this administration is actually Obama's third term without the restraints of getting kickback. Interesting. Yeah, we've had callers on this show make that point as well, that this is just the third term of Barack Hussein Obama that we are seeing right now. Well, you look at Susan Rice. I mean, Susan Rice had power in the Obama administration, but she's got even more power now in the Biden administration, and especially when you've got, does Joe Biden I mean, let's be honest. I mean, is he shuffling around while somebody else actually shuffles the deck of what's going on in the White House? I think we all know the answer to that question. Suzanne Nordwick, a candidate for the Public Service Commission. And Suzanne, great to see you as always. Tell us why you wanted to run for the Public Service Commission.
Well, the Public Service Commission, one of their biggest jobs is regulating the utility industries in Montana. And as an engineer, I'm very familiar with the utility industry and what that means to the future of Montana and the strength of Montana and being able to keep good paying jobs here. And so my background, I've worked for the Department of Energy doing right out of school at one of the sites doing research and development to improve our electrical grid and that kind of stuff. So I've been on the peripherals of what the PSC does my whole career. And when I saw that there was an opening in this race, and I'm always active in politics, and I just kind of thought this was really where would be a good fit for me. I actually won an award back in my younger days before my mom career from the Metallurgical Society using electricity to help recover strategic metals from that we use in our munitions and stuff. I'm using electricity, so it just kind of seemed like a great fit for me, and I am very detailed oriented. And on the Public Service Commission, you have to balance what the investors in the utility need versus what you want to make sure that you're getting affordable rates for your customers. And so it's a very complex system. And my engineering technical background in testing systems and looking at their feasibility I thought fit really well with being able to do a good job for Montana on the PSC.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and some people may think, the Public Service Commission, the PSC, it's less political. It's more about just needing people that stand up for consumers. And to a certain extent, that's right. But let's be honest, the left and the Democrats, vis-a-vis the courts and the media, are trying to inject some crazy politics into the PSC. Well, first off, I mean, the reason why Northwestern Energy customers have had to face such these rate hikes is because of all the green energy that the Democrats were forcing onto the grid, forcing onto Northwestern Energy. That's more expensive. It's more expensive to then back up that less reliable green power. So that's why, for example, my neighbors a few blocks away who get Northwestern Energy electricity are paying much steeper rate hikes than I did as an electric cooperative customer, because they weren't having these types of decisions forced upon them. Yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. We need to have people on the Public Service Commission that are aware of the different costs involved in the different forms of energy and what's best for the people. And one of my policies that I'm running on is I want to have a Montana First policy, Montana First and energy generation, and Montana First in use of that power that we generate here. And I haven't talked about yet, but my background also includes a lot of mining experience, and so I'm very pro mining in Montana, and I am very pro Montana based and sourced energy. And I think we need to have that to have a good, reliable base power system in Montana. We have to be able to get through the Montana winters without importing any electricity, what happened this year with Northwestern. I think that's very important to have there, and not so much the woke agenda.
Well, you talk about the woke agenda. Very clearly, they are trying to inject the woke agenda. The very same climate kids lawsuit and their, wealthy white liberal parents that are, propping this up. They filed the climate lawsuit to inject climate-related decisions into every decision of state government and state agencies. And now they're trying to force not only climate decisions into every decision of the PSC, but they're trying to deliberately cook the books to make the more expensive, less reliable green energy, so-called green energy, look less expensive than it really is. And so it can be even more devastating to electric ratepayers, to our electric utility industry, and more.
Yeah, well, one of the things I would do on the PSC is to insist that the political activists never force the ratepayers to have to pay more. That they'll be judged on a level, everything will be judged on a level playing field regardless of the energy source. And so, there won't be any playing any favorites. Yeah. Hey, we're here at the Hilton Garden Inn in Bozeman. If you're listening on 1450 KMMS, come on down and join us. We've got microphones open for you. We got to catch up with a ton of great folks earlier, and so we've got the microphones open for you. And, of course, we'll be here on through our 9 o'clock statewide hour of the show as well, broadcasting live right now, 1450 KMMS Bozeman, 970 KBUL Billings, KINX Great Falls, and, of course, the great KJJR out of the Flathead Valley as well. Suzanne Nordwick, there is a competitive Republican primary here in this district for the Public Service Commission, and you're running against, or he's running against you. Your opponent has always been considered one of the more, shall we say, moderate Republicans in the state legislature. Well, we can say that he used to be considered a moderate Republican, but now he's not considered a moderate. He is definitely considered the Rhino, according to Legistats. That they've given him that name. Montana Family Foundation has ranked him the lowest Republican they've ever scored at 13%. He was barely above the Democrats on their card. From that, it looks like he's kind of gone full woke. Yeah, because the Montana Family Foundation, typically when it comes to these, what some might call the social issues, typically, the spending issues, Medicaid expansion, for example, you might get a split amongst legislative Republicans. But when it comes to the radical transgender agenda, some of the radical social policies, the cultural Marxist stuff that the Democrats are trying to inject on our kids, we shouldn't have to fight for Republican votes on those issues. Why do we have to fight so hard for Republican votes on those issues? This should be no-brainer, common sense stuff across the board. We should be pulling Democrats in, if any of them are open-minded whatsoever. But there's no reason any Republican whatsoever should be voting against or in support of this woke nonsense. Yeah, that's what I would think too. And I don't know if it's just because the voters don't know, they haven't looked at his record. And I was trying to run a positive campaign, so I didn't really know his record, and then I started looking at it, and I was just in disbelief that, you defined a whole new category of rhino in Montana, because it's not just that he's not pro-life, it's that he doesn't know how many sexes there are, and theoretically he's a fourth-generation cattle farmer, but you would have thought he would have learned that, I guess, on the farm. He wanted to punish kids if they used the wrong preferred pronouns. Basically, if somebody was identifying as transgender and wanted to be called a different name or something, he voted that kids could be punished for that in schools. He also did not protect the kids against the experimental sex change surgeries or taking cross-sex hormones. So yeah, it's just another. Kind of in disbelief. I couldn't believe it, where there were some Republicans in the legislature who stood with the Democrats on some of these things. It's like, and now some people might say, well, and of course, if your opponent joins us on the show, because we have, just like we have the microphones open today, we have phone lines open for candidates and everyday folks as well. But some people might say, well, the Public Service Commission doesn't deal with these social issues. They don't deal with these cultural issues. They just deal with electric utility rates, et cetera. But when you look at the woke agenda and the Democrat propaganda machine and how they try to intimidate conservatives and intimidate Republicans into voting for some of this nonsense, it's the cultural wokeism, but the climate wokeism, it's the same crowd with the same agenda. And it's the woke climate alarmists that are trying to inject their woke agenda into every PSC decision. So if you don't stand up to the woke crazies on the cultural issues, on the kids' issues, how can we know that you're going to stand up to the woke crazies on the PSC issues? Yeah, exactly. And I think this race has been an eye-opener to a lot of people in Montana that have thought that the PSC wasn't political. And I think on the previous hour, you had the author here, Charles Garner, and he kind of talked about how how things were, if you splintered it up, it was easy to start a fire. And that's kind of what might go on here if people don't wake up and pay attention that these social issues do matter on the Public Service Commission races.
That's right. Suzanne Nordwick, a candidate for the Public Service Commission. I say it's Southwest Montana, but with the new redistricting, as she mentioned, it's Central Montana, it's Southwest Montana, it's Western Montana, it's kind of all over the place. Quick break here on Montana Talks. We've got Troy Miller here with the Gallatin County Republicans. They've got their Lincoln Reagan dinner coming up. We'll catch up with Troy, more with Suzanne. And then Charles Garner, he lives in the Flathead.
Taking your calls live. 406-294-0970. Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
All right, Suzanne Nordwick's in the house. We'll come back to Suzanne here in just a moment. And by the way, if you want to be on the microphone, come down and join us here at the Hilton Garden Inn in Bozeman. Yeah, earlier this morning I got to catch up with a number of great folks. Jolene Crum, a candidate for House District 64. Esther Fishbaugh, candidate for House District 65. So great to catch up with them. And then, of course, Anna was here as well. Anna, you know, every time I take the show on the road and we, you know, get out of the studio and set up from a remote location like we are today, we always get to meet so many great immigrants, legal immigrants that legally came to this country, that escaped communism and came to America for freedom. And they tell us time and time again, Aaron, there is nowhere else to flee to. There is nowhere else to escape to. We have got to stand up for freedom here in America. And anyways, great conversation with the three of them and more here earlier this morning. Anna made a really good point about how, you know, with all this woke nonsense going on right now, and certainly we can see it with these anti-Semitic protests and riots that have been taking place on college campuses. Her, and then also just talking with Jolene Crum as well, they say what keeps them faithful and optimistic is not only their faith, but also the fact that they see young men in particular rising up, young men in particular standing up and being men. And I partly wonder if like the last few years, like the craziness has been on such full display. These kids were told to shut up and wear masks. They were told they couldn't play sports, and because of, you know, all this stupidity. And then they see all this radical transgender stuff. And yes, they see kids who want to identify as furries and identify as animals and identify as this and identify as that. And I think it's gotten so crazy that finally these young men in particular are saying, you know what, enough of this. Just like those young men at UNC Chapel Hill rallied around the American flagpole and said, no, enough. And there was a young woman there who was holding up that American flag, and all these young men surrounded her and surrounded the American flag, and they stood up and became men. And Anna said she's seeing more of that, and Jolene said the same thing. She heard some great stories about her own son who did a whole speech for his class, and other classes got to see the speech as well, where he talked about biblical masculinity. So anyway, this is part of the great part about taking the show on the road. All the great folks we get a chance to catch up with here. Troy Miller is the finance chair for the Gallatin County Republicans and is the chairman for the upcoming Lincoln Reagan dinner here in Gallatin County. Troy, I had to kind of joke with you earlier. Great to see you, by the way. You know, you're like the one dude in the Gallatin County Republicans that we see, you know, kind of helping out with these events, because the Gallatin County Republican women, and they run the show. They're the hard chargers around here. So, you know, it's the Gallatin County women that run the show around here. They might give you a title every now and then, but we know it's the women that are running the show around here.
Yeah, between Carol and Marla, they're just fantastic at what they're doing and the teams that they put together. I mean, you think about it, Carol, all the time having great speakers such as yourself in the show. Marla we have 12 subcommittees in the Gallatin County precinct, Republican precinct, Central Committee, 12 different subcommittees, and those are so active, and we've engaged all of that. I don't know if you're aware of it, but between what Carol's doing and what Marla's doing, we put a position coming into the primary to the primaries a conservative person vetted in every seat possible in the county, which has never been done before, Aaron. So if you're with school board, one or not, but we had someone running, city, someone running for the county commission, House, Senate, all those seats in our county were filled.
Well,
100%.
I mentioned Jolene Crum and Esther Fishbaugh, and they're the only Republicans in both of those races. They're in what seems to be a heavily favored Democrat district, but talk about the importance of why it's important that you don't just leave that blank empty and you have somebody out there still getting that message out, even in a heavily Democrat favored district.
Correct. And we've done that. Kudos to Carol and Marla and her team and all that they're doing.
It's interesting, Gallatin County is interesting for a number of reasons because it was always a red county. It was always a Republican conservative stronghold. Pre-COVID-19, you had all these what I call latte liberals. Nothing against people that drink lattes. That's just how I describe them because they came from Seattle and San Francisco. And they realized that there was something they didn't like about Seattle and San Francisco, but they didn't realize that it was them that created what they didn't like about Seattle and San Francisco.
So true.
So they wanted to come here and make their own little mini Seattle and San Francisco. So they became the majority in Bozeman, for example. But then post-COVID-19, the political refugees, the blue states, the blue cities, it was such a mess. It was so disgusting what was happening there. People finally had enough. And then the working class folks, everyday, working men and women said, we can't live here any longer. We've got to get our kids out of Portland. We cannot do this anymore. And so then they moved in, and it's changed the numbers a little bit. But you still have a liberal majority in Bozeman, but Gallatin County, outside of Bozeman, do you feel like the numbers are eventually going to shift, which is why it's so important to stay in the fight and keep a voice in every race in every district?
Great question. Yes, downtown we definitely have seen the latte sippers. But interesting is that the numbers, the new people moving here now, we have a higher majority, about a 25% increase in people registering as Republicans than Democrats. So we're seeing a bit of the tide shift. So yeah, we're hopeful.
Well, and I hope, too, that just like the black vote is starting to abandon Biden and the Democrats, the Hispanic vote abandoning Biden and the Democrats, I hope that a lot of people that maybe they came to Bozeman with pre-existing conditions to vote for the Democrat candidates, I hope that more and more of them are starting to realize, the more they become embedded in the community and ingrained in the community, that then they start to think, you know what, God, we see what a mess everything is, and that they finally start to be open to shifting their thinking. But there's still some people, and I ran into, a couple of them last night. It doesn't matter how bad things get. They will still vote for Joe Biden. They will still vote for John Tester. It does not matter how, and I don't know if it's just Trump derangement syndrome, it's a hatred for Trump, or just that's the jersey they've always worn. That's what they're going to continue to wear.
Well, they grew up in it. They're raised in it and see no change. The good news is people are waking up, and our county is no different. So we're starting to see that. I think that's where we have such a groundswell going into these primaries, is because people are tired, sick and tired. I mean sick and tired of what we're seeing in the schools, right? In the health department, the masks, the lockdown, all the things that we've gone through. It's getting worse. Now they're just shifting, right? They're going to, well, we'll raise your kids. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and you talk about that. You're seeing a lot of enthusiasm heading into your Gallatin County Lincoln Reagan dinner coming up.
Yes. Last year, I've been fortunate. I co-chaired this 4 years ago. This is my fourth year at the Lincoln Reagan dinner. I don't know if you want to call me a chair or not, but we have normally cut this off at 300 the last 3 years, and we are already current at 300. We might have another 50 tickets. We can put some seats together. So if anyone's out there that thinks that they want to attend, please do not wait. We are at literally the limit we've cut off the last 3 years is 300. We're already there. And 15th of this next week of May, we have to shut it off. We have to go hard with the number. We have a caterer. We got to know how much food that we're supplying, how many dinners. And so all of that is, it's here.
Well, look at how, I mentioned Bozeman. it's interesting because, the Continental Divide is a little further down the road, right, closer towards Butte. But really, this is the political divide here because you got the Eastern Congressional District on the other side of the Bozeman Pass. Livingston's in the Eastern District. Bozeman's in the Western District. So as a result, you'll see the candidates for the Eastern District and the Western District coming here to the battleground of Bozeman.
Right.
So the Lincoln Reagan dinner, I think, similar fashion. Statewide candidates will be there. Your local legislative candidates will be there, and then kind of on both sides of the political divide. Shall we speak from east and west?
Yeah, great lineup. You probably have seen the lineup, but we have candidate Tim Sheehy speaking. We have Congressman Ryan Zinke speaking. We have Senator Dane speaking, and of course, we're very honored to have as our keynote speaker the governor, the highest seat in the state. So we think we have a great lineup. We have a lot of enthusiasm. Ticket sales are where we've been in the past. We're trying to raise that up a little bit. So again, for what it's worth, if you're looking to attend, you can go to the website GallatinRepublicans.com. You can buy individual tickets, couple tickets, and the sponsored tables are pretty much filled up. We do have what's called a 50-50 corporate table, which allows people to team up with another business and buy a corporate table at what we call 50-50 corporate tables.
All right. And you can email financechair@GallatinRepublicans.com, financechair@GallatinRepublicans.com. Quick break. Back after this.
Your morning espresso starts right here. It's the Sean Hannity Morning Minute.
The White House puts out official transcripts whenever the president speaks. And in this folks, imagine what we can do the next 4 more years. Pause. The way they write it up in the official transcript. 4 more years. Inaudible. Now, let's play that again because it sounds very audible to me when he says pause. You decide.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years.
What do you call that, Linda? Propaganda, misinformation, lying, all the above?
I mean, I call it lying. I think lying really sums it up well.
The Sean Hannity Show from coast to coast later today.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential. But finding those people can be a major hassle, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. With ZipRecruiter, one click sends your job to hundreds of top job sites. But more than that, ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies the candidates with the skills you need, sends you a list of great matches to review, then actively invites them to apply for your job. And the results speak for themselves. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's right, the first day. Now you can focus on your business and let ZipRecruiter do the work finding the best people for you. See for yourself. Experience the ease, efficiency, and power of ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
First fighter Trump needs in Congress.
I'm Troy Downing, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Troy Downing for Congress.
This is where Montana talks. Montana Talks with Aaron Flint.
All right. Hey, real quick, I want to talk Butte politics because this is fascinating. We have seen in recent elections where, Butte, folks, the great men and women of Butte are conservative, right? They're hardworking. They support our natural resource industries. They want to get out and enjoy their weekends, and so they like multiple use. Snowmobiles, ATVs, hunting, fishing. They're pro Second Amendment, but because it's been such a big union town for so long, so many of them just do what they've always done, which is vote for the Democrat Party, even though the Democrat Party has abandoned them. But we've seen those numbers start to shift here now. And Republicans have been winning seats even in places like Anaconda. I want to get Suzanne Nordwick's take on that here in just a second. First, real quick, hey, you guys have heard that Billings Last Diet now has a remote option. They've got a remote option now available, so you can do a remote meeting with your diet coach, They will ship you your ideal protein food products in the mail. They've got a scale that you can use at your own house. And then you can do your remote coaching with your diet coach at Billings Last Diet. So glad they're offering that remote program because, our Billings listeners have been able to benefit from the program. And we've had listeners lose over 100 pounds because of Billings Last Diet. I lost 33 pounds in under 3 months. But now you can, too, even if you don't live in the Billings area. Go to billingslastdiet.com or call 294-6751. Suzanne Nordwick, you're also the chair of basically the Republican Women for the whole state of Montana. But there's really been, talk Butte in particular. I know we only got a couple of minutes here, but there's really been a big change in Butte, I feel like, with more Republican voters in Butte, more people that are waking up that the Democrat Party's abandoned people in Butte.
Yeah, Aaron, I've been running since 2014 as a Republican in the Butte Anaconda area, helping get the message out of our platform when we realized, that we are what Butte does. And when I ran in 2020, I had several people tell me that they're waking up and they weren't going to vote Republican, or they weren't going to vote Democrat again. I did have one guy, was kind of waking up, but he still kind of liked that guy that had 3 fingers. Couldn't remember his name. But yeah, and I guess, I grew up Republican in Butte. My reason I ended up there is I'm a 5th generation Montanan. My grandmother was born in Miles City in 1886. And after her son, my grandfather, graduated from law school, he asked his wife from the big city of Tulsa where she wanted to live, and she picked Butte because she thought Billings was too much of a cow town back in 1940. And so anyway, I grew up as basically a 5th generation Republican in Butte, Montana, so I'm not afraid to stand up there.
But you were telling me the younger people, some of the older generations, look, the union bosses have got it so ingrained that you have to vote for the Democrat Party. It's what they've always done. It's a habit they can't break. It's an addiction they won't break. But for the younger people, they're really starting to move towards the Republican Party because they know that the Democrat Party's moved away from them.
Oh, correct. We've had a young lady been coming to some of the Republican Central Committee meetings in Silver Bow County, and she assures us that there's quite a few kids like her at Butte High.
Wow.
They're trying to figure out
almost like 50-50, really.
That's the feedback we're getting from the report on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They're just trying to figure out what they see the imbalance, and I think kind of what you were saying in your introductory there about that the Butte values really are aligned with the Republican platform.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. Well, and we just had big business news out of the Butte area about, because the Democrats are forcing green energy, have been forcing green energy over all these years, it's driving up electric rates. And so there's some big employers that are pulling out now, tragically. We have more than enough electricity in Montana at our fingertips, and the left and the liberal judges are trying to shut it all down.
Yeah, mining and electricity have gone hand in hand all throughout Montana's history. Because that's who started the first power companies was the mining companies. And if you're going to mine, you're going to have electricity. If you want electricity, you're going to have to mine.
Yeah, and everything else, REC, silicone, everything, you name it. All right, Suzanne Nordwick, great to see you. Thanks for dropping in. We're live from the Hilton Garden Inn in Bozeman. Open microphones for you as well.